Hi there. I'm genuinely glad you're here watching this. It truly means a lot. If you feel inclined to subscribe, know that your support makes a real difference. Let's get into the story. The first time Jack Callahan noticed her, she was standing barefoot in the middle of a gallery, entirely absorbed in a painting that most people barely acknowledged as they passed. Her name was Claire. She freelanced as an interior designer, and her confidence didn't come from wealth or social status, but from something more grounded, a quiet strength forged from a past she kept mostly hidden, like armor beneath her drive. Jack, a veteran software architect approaching 40, wasn't a man easily stirred by first impressions. His life was one of discipline and repetition. Up by 6, coffee black and strong, gym by 7, followed by meetings, code reviews, product planning, and project check-ins. Evenings were his own, solitary dinners, no phone calls, no obligations. Then came Claire, and with one spontaneous laugh at his awkward comment about a shattered clock sculpture, his routine began to bend. They bumped into each other again a week later. Then again. And somewhere between those accidental meetings and long nights trading ideas over wine and design sketches, a genuine connection began to grow. Their relationship accelerated in a way that almost felt unreal. Within 8 months, Claire had moved into Jack's minimalist townhouse tucked into a quiet street in Boston. Their lives began to mesh effortlessly. She softened his home with cozy textures and warm accents, pillows in earth tones, shelves lined with books and soft light. He brought clarity to her chaotic workflows, sorting her invoicing system, organizing her schedule. Their closeness deepened quietly. The scent of her vanilla bergamot perfume lingered in his shirts. Her laughter became part of the rhythm of the home as dinner simmered on the stove. For 2 years, they were solid, grounded. Jack never questioned the late dinners with clients or glanced at her phone when it rested face down during brunch. Trust didn't come easily to him, but once he gave it completely. Everything changed at an engagement party Claire invited him to. It was held at a lake house just outside the city limits. The setting was dreamy, floating candles in the pool, twinkling lights woven into the hedges, soft music playing from hidden speakers. Claire arrived late, about an hour. Jack was nursing a drink near the bar when her car finally pulled up. She stepped out looking flawless in a navy dress. But she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a man, tall, built, exuding charm with a rugged edge and a leather jacket worn just right. Claire smiled and introduced him casually. "This is Evan. He's a new client. We've been working non-stop on a big project in Back Bay, practically inseparable lately." Jack greeted him calmly. Evan's handshake was smug, lingering slightly too long. Jack caught how Evan looked at Claire, not respectfully, but like someone who believed she already belonged to him. The evening continued, but something had shifted. Evan hovered. He touched her arm too often, laughed too enthusiastically, leaned in too close. Jack, who rarely showed emotion, felt his jaw tightening with every interaction. He tried to dismiss it as overthinking. But when Claire leaned in to whisper to Evan during the toast, a cold knot settled in his stomach. Later, near the wine cellar, Jack ran into Evan again. The man offered an easy grin. "You must be Jack, the software guy. Claire's mentioned you once or twice." Jack responded with nothing more than a nod before walking away. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning played out as usual. Jack made coffee, but Claire was gone, leaving a short message. "Client emergency. Crazy schedule today. Don't wait up." He stared at the words while steam curled from his mug like unease creeping through his chest. In the following weeks, Evan's name came up more frequently in Claire's updates, meetings, working dinners, tight deadlines. "He's just passionate," she once said with a shrug. "Intense." Jack didn't argue, but he observed everything. One night she came home with wet hair, blaming a sudden rainstorm. Yet outside, the pavement was completely dry. Another time, she said she'd spent the day in Back Bay, but someone they both knew mentioned seeing her walking with Evan in Cambridge. The breaking point came on an ordinary laundry night. Claire casually mentioned a brief retreat, just a few days away at Pine Hollow Lodge. "It's just some designers, a couple of clients. Evan will be there too. You get how it is." Jack didn't respond immediately. Then, in a measured voice, he said, "If you go on that trip, don't come back." She stared at him, stunned. "Are you serious?" He didn't yell, just repeated it, more firmly this time. "If you walk out that door and go to Pine Hollow, I won't be here when you return." Claire let out a small, nervous laugh. "You're overreacting. It's work, Jack. You know how important this is for me." There was no argument, no shouting, just silence. The next morning, she left, a small suitcase in one hand, sketchbook in the other, and a barely there kiss to his cheek. Jack stood by the window and watched her climb into the waiting Uber. She glanced back once, then disappeared. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd saved days ago. Hunter Graves, private investigator. By the time Claire's car rounded the corner, Jack had already sent over the lodge's address, a couple of reference photos, and an itinerary, all encrypted. Hunter wasn't an ordinary PI, ex-special forces, emotionless, efficient. Jack kept it brief. "She's with someone. I need proof. No scenes. Keep it clean." Hunter's reply was crisp. "Copy that. You'll have it in 72 hours. Jack resumed his routine. Smoothie, morning run, emails, interface reviews. But beneath it all ran a low, relentless current of dread. He didn't know what Hunter would find. He didn't even want to speculate. But some quiet part of him, the part that once imagined forever with Claire, had already begun to release her. 3 days passed. At 10:42 p.m. on the third night, Jack's inbox pinged. Subject, request completed, Pine Hollow report. His breath caught. He clicked. There was a folder, 3 photographs. A single caption, taken at 7:13 p.m., day 2, West Side Trail near the Pine Hollow dock. Jack opened the first image. Claire and Evan walking hand in hand by the lake, their heads tilted toward one another, laughing softly. The second photo showed a picnic blanket. Claire's shoes were off. 2 wine glasses, half full. Evan's arm rested behind her as she leaned into him. Close, too close, at ease. The third image landed like a blow, a kiss, slow, certain. Not heat of the moment, not accidental, just real. Jack stared at the screen, unmoving. No shouting, no fury. Only the cold clarity of truth. He didn't erupt in fury. What stirred inside him was quieter. An unrelenting undercurrent in his chest. A pressure like distant thunder that never cracked the sky but shook something fundamental in his bones. The man Claire had brushed off as just a client had trespassed a boundary Jack had considered sacred. And worse, she had crossed it with him, freely, without pause. That night, Jack didn't find rest. Nor did he grieve with tears. Instead, he orchestrated a finale, but not an ordinary one. He envisioned an end so deliberate, so complete, it would echo in Claire's life long after the dust settled. He began with their home. Every key she once carried lost its purpose by dawn. The smart locks had been reprogrammed, the garage access remotely terminated. Her fingerprints no longer triggered the alarm system. Quietly, he diverted half of their joint savings into a personal legal fund, locking her out of every shared financial channel. Then he turned to her belongings. Every item, whether it held meaning or was simply familiar, was boxed up with the cold precision of someone burying the past. Her framed drawings, the coffee mugs she refused to drink from unless they were chipped just so. Even the robe that hung like a ghost in the bathroom. One by one, every piece was carefully packed away with a clinical kind of care. He didn't throw anything out. Instead, he sent it all to her parents in Vermont, tracked insured, documented. On the final package, he placed a single sheet of paper. It read, "You already had 1 foot out the door for your retreat. I've taken care of the rest. That door won't open for you again. No name, no sign-off." Claire returned 2 days later, still laughing softly at a text thread with Evan, trading jokes about an absurd client. She stepped onto the porch, smile fading. Something was wrong. The porch light wasn't lit. The welcome mat was gone. The front door, unfamiliar in its stillness, was locked. Her key wouldn't turn. The keypad spat out her code. She called Jack, straight to voicemail. A message followed. "Hey, I'm home. Can you open up? Jack? Hello?" Silence. She rang the bell, knocked, then pounded. A neighbor paused nearby, curiosity on his face. "Locked out?" he asked. Claire forced a laugh. "Forgot the new code," she lied, but inside, something twisted. Her gaze fell to the mailbox. A delivery slip flapped in the breeze. Her name was on it. The address? Her parents' house. The chill hit her spine. Her phone buzzed. A missed voicemail. She played it. It wasn't Jack's voice. It was her mother's. "Claire, can you call me sweetheart?" The words were slow, brittle. Her pulse surged. She stumbled down the steps, thumb fumbling on the screen. When her mother answered, her voice was fragile, edged with confusion. "Boxes came today. From Jack. All your things. And photos, Claire. He sent photos." Images of her. With Evan. A pause fell like a stone. "I told him he was being cruel," her mother whispered, breaking. "I stood in his doorway and defended you. I didn't know, Claire. I didn't know." Claire tried to speak. No sound emerged. Her mother continued, her voice cracking. "He's not answering his phone. I don't blame him. Just tell me, was it an accident or a decision?" Claire blinked back a sting. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." "You did," her mother said softly. "And not just Jack." The call ended. Claire sat still, eyes fixed on the darkened house. Curtains shut tight, lights off. She had thought this was the ending. What she didn't realize was that it was the start of something else. Jack hadn't simply left her behind. He had moved forward, with the kind of calm resolve that cuts deeper than rage ever could. His vengeance didn't roar. It whispered. She remained on the sidewalk for a long time, suitcase upright beside her, fingers clenched around her phone like it could still connect her to the past. The collapse wasn't sudden. It had already begun long ago, unnoticed until the ruins settled at her feet. For a moment, she considered knocking again, maybe apologizing, pleading. But the stillness on the other side of the door told her it would be pointless. Jack wasn't angry anymore. He was finished. The same Uber that had dropped her off was idling across the street. She rose, heavy-limbed, and gave the driver an address she hadn't said aloud in years, her childhood home. When she arrived, the porch light greeted her. Inside, the foyer was lined with boxes, each one carefully arranged. Her belongings, so familiar yet foreign now, sat waiting like relics from another life. A scarf Jack had bought her last autumn, her toothbrush, a pair of heels resting atop a novel she had once underlined with hearts. But what stopped her was the envelope her mother handed her wordlessly. No judgment, no demands, just a gentle gesture as it was placed on the table. "Read when you're ready," her eyes seemed to say. That night Claire lay in her old bed, eyes wide open, sleep miles away. She didn't weep, not yet. Her mind wandered back to moments Jack had held her during sleepless nights. The way he'd draw her a bath after exhausting workdays. The belief he had in her, unwavering. She had tossed that away. For what? Evan's charm? The spark of a reckless thrill? A way to escape the comfort of something steady and real? The tears came then. Silently. Not for Jack, but for the person she had once been. the one he had helped her become. The reflection he had nurtured in her was gone. But Jack didn't stop moving. While she unraveled, he rebuilt himself. He started with what was left. Closed every lingering shared account, removed her name from emergency contact lists, changed his Spotify password, not in anger, in reclamation. He found the wedding brochures they'd once browsed, deleted old cloud albums, tossed the artificial plants she'd insisted gave the house life. Slowly, thoroughly, he erased her. Then he contacted his attorney. No marriage certificates, no children, only a few shared obligations to sort through. Still, he wanted her name gone, from the car title, the mock-up business cards she'd helped design, even from the credit line she used for those spontaneous, unearned flights. "It's not about revenge," he told the lawyer. "It's about precision," the lawyer nodded. "You want a clean break." "No," Jack corrected. "I want it sterile." Then something unexpected. A social media post. Not bitter, not melodramatic. Just an image. Jack on a sun-drenched patio, coffee in one hand, a book balanced on his thigh. The caption read, "Peace isn't loud. It's the stillness that settles in when you stop waiting for someone who already left." It spread like smoke. Friends noticed. Colleagues whispered. Some reached out to Claire, others disconnected without a word. The truth doesn't shout, but it lingers. It smells. And eventually everyone caught the scent. The photos had surfaced. As for Evan, 2 weeks after the retreat, he vanished. No calls, no farewells, just a hollow quiet where he used to be. There was no parting gesture. When her name appeared on his phone, he picked up with a voice stripped bare of warmth. "Hey, everything okay?" "You've got to be joking," she shot back. He let out a slow breath. "Claire, let's not turn this into a spectacle. It was what it was. You knew that going in." "I gave up my whole world," she said, barely above a whisper. "That was your choice," he replied, cool and steady. "Don't put that on me." Then the line went dead. Just like that, the man she'd once risked everything for became the one who exposed just how deep emptiness could run. Claire began sending her resume to design firms across the state, but the spark that once fueled her creativity had dulled. Her name felt heavy in once familiar circles. Some remembered the gossip, others simply didn't answer. Doors that used to open with ease now stayed shut. Jack, meanwhile, was rebuilding his foundation. He resumed his early morning jogs, offered his time teaching coding to underprivileged teens, prepared full meals again, slept peacefully, and laughed with ease. One afternoon, while clearing out old messages, he stumbled upon a missed call. A voicemail. He pressed play. "Jack, it's Claire. I saw what you posted. I've read it again and again. I probably lost the right to say anything. I broke something rare, but I miss you. I just needed to say it. You were the only place I ever felt truly safe." "I ruined it. I know. I'm sorry. Really sorry." Jack listened silently. No change in expression, no smile, no frown, just quiet. Then he erased the message. Because revenge didn't come in fury or spite. It came in becoming the version of yourself they'd forever regret leaving behind. That winter came down hard. The Boston skyline, once the symbol of Claire's ambition, now felt like a place she could see but never reach. A month after finalizing the divorce, she left her parents' home and moved into a tight, shabby studio apartment that always smelled faintly of burnt toast and mildew. The walls barely muted the neighbors. The windows stayed fogged no matter the season, and the heat never quite chased away the cold. She'd grown thinner, not from discipline, but from erosion. Her cheekbones were pronounced, not chic, but worn. Her once-groomed hair now lived in a careless bun. Her vanity had vanished. So had her glow. Her phone sat idle most days. No good morning messages, no midday updates, no playlists from Jack that used to align perfectly with her mood. She began applying for jobs again. The count climbed from dozens to hundreds. Most responses never came. The ones that did sounded polite but wary. Boston's creative scene was large enough to expand, but close-knit enough to hold grudges. The whisper about Claire had spread. Unreliable, rash, not a safe bet. People sensed it even without knowing the full story. It was in her tone, trying too hard to sound composed. In her explanations, too polished, too desperate to mask the gaps. In her smile, too brittle for someone who once held command in a room. Jack had changed too, but in a different way. He hadn't grown colder, only clearer. He'd taken a short-term contract with a clean energy startup out in Colorado. A fresh beginning. New air. New city. No memories chasing him down the street. He started each day hiking through red rock trails, joined a quiet little writing group, found solace among books, and mentored teenagers on app development every weekend. He never mentioned Claire. If someone asked about past relationships, he'd simply say, "The past taught me what I needed. That's enough." But Claire couldn't stop remembering. It wasn't just guilt over the betrayal. It was grief over how wrong she'd been about the man she betrayed. Evan had been electric, unpredictable, intoxicating. But what she failed to see was this. Evan didn't crave connection. He craved the chase. Once she was his, the thrill vanished, and so did he. One night, tipsy and full of regret, she messaged him. "I don't even know why I'm doing this." He answered almost instantly, "Because I made you feel alive." She stared at those words, then stared at herself. No, Jack had been the one who made her feel truly alive. Evan had only made her feel temporarily wanted. She never wrote back. Months later, drifting through a department store with no aim, she paused at the checkout line and flipped through a local magazine. Her breath caught. Jack was on the cover, smiling among a group of students, a laptop tucked under one arm. The headline read, "Denver Tech Advocate Inspires the Next Generation." He looked different, stronger, sun-kissed, at peace. She bought the magazine, rushed home, and devoured the article. It didn't mention his personal life. No references to Boston. Just his work, his passion, and a single quote that pierced through her. When you think you've lost everything, that's usually when you find out who you really are. And sometimes, who you become is better. She clutched the magazine to her chest. The next morning, she wrote a letter. Handwritten, ink smudged from her grip. It wasn't an appeal, not an effort to rekindle. She knew that door had long since closed. It was a confession, not of infidelity, but of blindness, of pride, of failing to see something rare until it was gone. She wrote of Jack, not as the man she once lived with, but as the man who quietly lived with honor. She didn't mail it. Instead, she folded it carefully and tucked it into a journal in her nightstand. Because some truths aren't meant to be shared, they're meant to echo in the silence. As for Jack, he had moved forward, not to someone new, not yet, but toward himself, fully, without apology. And that was enough. A year slipped by, not just in days, but in slow, quiet reckonings. Claire still lived in that cramped apartment. It had only grown quieter. Her days fell into steady routines, instant coffee at sunrise, long walks with headphones, sporadic freelance jobs that barely kept the lights on. The nights remained the hardest. Hours would pass as she stared at the ceiling, haunted by questions she could never quite answer. She had stopped blaming Jack long ago. That wound had closed. Now the burden was hers alone, to carry not just the mistake, but the failure to cherish something solid, something pure. Jack hadn't been flawless, but he had loved her gently, steadily. And she had mistaken that steadiness for stagnation and cast it aside. Now she longed for the calm she once dismissed. One evening, as winter finally gave way to a reluctant spring, Claire found herself standing outside the house they once shared. She didn't knock. She already knew he'd left. She just needed to see it one more time. She walked past slowly, just as a young couple stepped out the door, laughing, their arms full of groceries. That home was no longer hers, and hadn't been for a very long time. She turned her back and walked steadily toward the car. Tucked deep in her coat pocket was a letter she had written nearly a year ago, its paper softened and worn from too many readings. Driving into the city, she found a small cafe hidden from the usual bustle, parked nearby, and entered quietly. She slipped the letter onto a modest bookshelf reserved for community reads. The envelope carried no name, just a single handwritten note across the front. If this feels meant for you, maybe it is. She didn't wait around. Far from there, Jack stood still on a snowy trail threading through the Colorado wilderness, a pale mist rising with each breath he exhaled. His dog remained close, a steady presence. The past no longer dictated his days. What defined him now were the decisions he'd made after everything fell apart. He didn't check Claire's updates anymore, didn't loop through old memories or unanswered questions. Closure wasn't something he chased. It had already settled quietly within him, in the calm, in the rebuilding, in the knowledge that he had faced grief and walked through it, changed. Not because someone new entered his story, but because he became someone new himself. He had once loved without restraint, had suffered in equal measure, and had found his way back through quiet strength. When people asked if he could ever trust like that again, his answer was always the same. I already do, in myself before anyone else. That was the real victory. Not the letting go, not the silence that followed, but the freedom that came without applause. The kind that doesn't slam the door, just closes it and leaves it shut. Because some doors are not meant to open again. And this is where the story ends. You're welcome to share what it stirred in you down in the comments. Thank you for being here. If this story spoke to you, there's more waiting for you on this channel. Until then, take good care, dear friend.